Welcome, everyone, to the Tuesday edition of the RotoWire NFL podcast, brought to you by Circa Sports. We've made it through likely round one of the fantasy playoffs for a lot of folks, entering week 16 here. I think, unfortunately, not nearly as many waiver wire pickups as we saw last week. I was campaigning for Zamir White. You were in on Ty Chandler. The answer was both, actually, if you played either one of those guys. A few of the receivers did as well, too. Not Odell Beckham, which I unfortunately went down in one of my leagues due to that advice. So we'll tackle a difficult waiver wire period here entering week 16. Of course, if we have any start-sit lineup questions, it's at this point of the season too. We'll be happy to help out towards the end of the show. But I want to make sure we get to all the top options for this week. Let's hit that music. Again, welcome everyone to the Tuesday edition of the RotoWire NFL podcast, brought to you by Circa Sports. I'm Joe Bartel. You can follow me on Twitter at JBFantasySports, and then you can follow Jake at RotoJake. We're talking Week 16 waiver wire pickups, and tons of people right now tuning in. We've got, obviously, I would assume waiver wire questions, but also roster questions as we get to that. We've been tackling the top 5 pickup list now for the past month and a half, and I think it's more or less done what we wanted to do, get those top targets out there. We discuss a bit more of these guys in later detail, and I think unfortunately for this week the list is pretty mundane, but also is kind of 7 or 8 guys that are all in a similar spot. So we differ on 2 of them, but I want you to talk about your number 1 waiver wire pickup this week, Jake.
Yeah, so I bounced around quite a bit this week. I changed my top 5, I think 8 different times, adding and removing guys that I found since doing this. And I'm just going to come out and say that throughout my whole top 5, there's not a whole lot of separation in between any of these players here. So even though I'm going to go ahead and say Tyler Boyd is my number 1 waiver wire pickup this year, there's not a whole lot separating
this week, not this year.
This week. Yeah, and well, possibly rest of this year, right? Because it looks like Jamar Chase is going to miss at least week 16 and possibly more games after that here. So, Jake Browning, we talked about him last week. He's playing pretty dang good, right? And we'll see how that goes. T. Higgins is still wide receiver 1, but the separation between Boyd and anybody else on that roster for a wide receiver 3 is a wide gap. And I'm rolling Boyd as the number 1 pickup this week.
Trickier matchup for Tyler Boyd going into the Steelers defense.
It is on the road, but a lot of these there's a lot of rough matchups in this whole list to begin with, and that's part of the reason I'm moving it around so much. But
and last week was tricky in the sense that we didn't know the stats of Tyreek Hill up until game time. We didn't know the stats of Jalen Hurts or Geno Smith. We didn't know the stats of Keenan Allen up until game time. It felt like for the Chargers too, and I don't know if we're going to run into that scenario quite as much. It sounds like Tyreek Hill was close, couldn't play. I would assume that'll be different this week. I would assume it's going to be different for a guy like Nico Collins, who somebody's asking in the chat. We'll get to the start-sit questions later on in the show. I want to get to that top 5 waiver wire list. But that's the issue when we're doing the show as early as we are in the week. Maybe makes things a little bit tricky. So you're projecting, and it seems correct, that Jamar Chase won't play this week, possibly rest of the season. We'll see what his status is. But the biggest beneficiary in your mind is Tyler Boyd. My number 1 waiver wire pickup probably isn't available in most leagues, but I was going through. I still have 5 more playoff teams, I guess 6 if you're counting one. Darren Waller was available in 2 of those 6, and both of those coincidentally did not have injured reserve spots. So I think that's part of it. If you're in a league that has injured reserve spots, Waller has been probably picked up.
Exactly.
But 63% rostered in Yahoo threshold. It's over our list, but we're to the point where we need to talk about the best guys that could be available. And I think theoretically Darren Waller is available in some formats.
Yeah, no, you're definitely right. I mean, he was gone in my 16-teamer and my 12-teamer with IR spots. I believe he's out there in my 12-teamer without IR spots and a shallow bench. But yeah, the only reason I didn't throw him on my list is 63% before, eventually we're going to get to the tight end section here later on in the show. And I put the first note at the very, very top, Tyler or Darren Waller, 63%. Go ahead and check on him first. But yeah, no, I mean, I agree with you. If he's out there, he's probably the top pickup here. And even okay, so for example, I've got Evan Ingram and Trey McBride in this 12-team league. I'm never going to start Darren Waller, but I think I'm going to pick him up just to block, just in case, So,
Peter Shanky, don't listen to this part because he could very well pick up and start Darren Waller in one of our leagues. I play Shanky in 2 different leagues in the semifinals, and I play Ryan Pohl in 2 different leagues in the semifinals here, so it's interesting. But yeah, I mean, that was one of the reasons I mentioned this, because I don't know if I play Darren Waller. I think I would over Tucker Kraft, who does make our tight end list later on, but not our overall top 5. Waller's the most competent receiver for the Giants, and whether it's Tyrod Taylor or Tommy DeVito starting, that matters to me. Somebody in the chat asks, would you play Waller over Kyle
I was going to
Pitts?
address that. Yes, absolutely.
Yes, I would.
The answer
I mean,
is
that's
yes.
exactly the scenario.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Pitts is a cut candidate. I was very close to cutting Pitts for Kate Otten last week. Just because we don't trust anything that's going on with Arthur Smith, and also there is some weather issues in that game, which does play a little bit of a role here.
Yeah, played a role last week too, certainly with the weather.
But yeah,
number two,
right there with you.
Number 2 on my list is Joshua Palmer, and you have him a little bit later on. But the reason I have it goes back to what we were saying a bit earlier with all the injury news and everything else. I have no idea what the status of Keenan Allen will be. If Keenan Allen is active and playing, Palmer probably bumps down further in my list. He's still in the top 5, but not number 2. But the question is, if you are the Chargers, why do you play Keenan Allen? He already has set the season. Well, he set his career high in receptions. He's already set the franchise record in receptions.
Go get an NFL record in receptions.
Well, I don't think he can after missing last week. Like there really is no incentive.
But anyway,
it's 140. He can't make 34 catches in 3 weeks, right?
He gets 15 a week, man. He's okay. He's Keenan Allen.
You're talking. This is a guy that has him in stake league or someone else.
No, this is a guy that has him in the dynasty league that really needs him to come out there. So yeah, Joshua Palmer, 30% rostered in Yahoo formats. I had him. He's someone interesting for me because I had him down at 4 because 1, the chance of Keenan Allen coming back, and 2, or for 3 reasons. 1, Keenan Allen may be coming back. 2, a guy named Easton Stick who say what you want about that disaster on Thursday night.
Yeah.
Easton Stick had some moderately productive fantasy value at one point, but it was all
all came in
garbage.
It
was all in garbage, and I'm pretty sure the Palmer touchdown was on a busted coverage
completely
too.
Busted. Yep.
Yeah, exactly.
Only 5 targets in that game. I was surprised by that. I don't know if it changes. I have to imagine there's going to be a significant dead cat bounce now that Brandon Staley is gone. But what does that mean? The Chargers only lose by 20 this time instead of 45 to the rate. I don't know how to quantify that. I just think Palmer is going to be in there. That defense, no matter who is coaching, is going to be bad, and I think they have to pass a lot. So the stats of Keenan Allen does make a big difference in Josh Palmer on my list.
Yeah. Again, the only reason I didn't have him up a little bit higher because I presume Keenan Allen will play, and he'll get the 18 targets, and Palmer will get the 5 or 6 targets again. But we'll see how this goes. If
they can take away Alex Erickson's 15 combined targets over the past 2 weeks, that would be great. And if that is Palmer or Quentin Johnston, good choice. We'll see. A lot of bad decisions overall in that coaching staff, and with Staley gone, maybe things look a little bit different. Your boy at number 2 is my boy, Dontavian Wicks, who I've been campaigning for all year. Finally had a great showing, thankfully, for my stake league team, which was forced to play Dontavian Wicks because I had Tyreek Hill out. I was very happy with the outcome. Not so happy with the fact that Wicks could have a prominent role this week because Jaden Reed appeared to have suffered a toe injury towards the latter stages of that disappointing loss. Thank you, Joe Barry, against the Buccaneers.
Yeah. So I had Wicks high on the list, and this probably shouldn't really factor in my rankings. But 1, he's only 4% rostered, right? He has the biggest chance of being out there when you need to go find someone and maybe even start someone. And it's injuries. I don't expect Christian Watson to come back from a handspring or I want to say handspring.
I mean, if he does do a handspring, then he probably is going to be healthy. I would assume he won't.
Yeah, that's the hamstring test for the hamstring injury. Anyway, I just got it. That would be. I wouldn't put it past the Packers training staff to roll something like that.
That's actually probably why they can't get these guys through, is because they are putting them in handspring jumps.
Yeah, but anyway, I don't expect Watson to play. We'll see about Jaden Reed. He left that game late. He has a toe injury.
He's been banged up all season.
Yeah, exactly. He's had a great rookie season despite hardly ever being around 100%. So keep that in mind. But Wicks looks good. He runs good routes, and he's really good at finding holes in zone coverage and getting separation in general. And he's good at readjusting to balls that Jordan Love throws behind him. That's another skill that I know. I was at that game on Sunday.
Sorry.
First home loss this year. Second time I've seen the Packers lose in person this year, if you count Vegas. So 2-2 record on the year, but I'll take that in a rebuilding year in general. But anyway, Wicks. It's a matter of skill that I'm seeing past the eye test. It's a matter of we believe in Jordan Love at this point. Despite the other challenges that this team is facing, I do not see Jordan Love being the problem, even though he's had some inaccurate throws over the last couple of weeks. But it's opportunity for Wicks, and I'm seeing enough of the skill to believe that he can be a fantasy contributor and a flex play if you really need one.
Yeah, absolutely, especially in deeper leagues.
How many people lost Olave and Tyreek Hill super late? I faced.
There was a lot of those players.
Yep, I faced the guy who benched Addison on Saturday.
Yep, me.
because he figured both Hill or Olave, or at least one of them, would play. And guess what? Neither played, and he ends up starting JSN, who had an okay game, but Addison starting would have beaten me. So we're seeing these types of situations here. So yeah, Wicks is someone that there are players that are out for the season even this week, right? I mean, there are quarterbacks that you can cut bait with your second quarterback for the most part. Keaton Mitchell, a guy, sad to see him tear his ACL. There are guys that can be pretty confidently dropped. Kyle Pitts is one of them, especially if you don't plan to start him this week. There are plenty of drops out there that you can go ahead and make your roster better by adding a guy like Wicks.
Yeah, again, from our top 5 list perspective, you had Tyler Boyd number 1. He makes my list at 3. I had Darren Waller at number 1, but likely not available. He was already rostered in 63% of leagues. We're at the point of the season where we need to check, and for me, he is the top guy if he is available. Josh Palmer also among both our top 5 lists, depending on the stats of Keenan Allen. You have Noah Brown listed number 3, and I had him completely off my list, in large part because I wanted to get this other guy on my list, but it's been so frustrating as somebody who has rostered and started Noah Brown in a few critical leagues. I have no idea what you're getting week to week, and that CJ Stroud didn't play last week. You can bet I didn't play Noah Brown, even though Nico Collins was out. That did cost me in that league. It's a frustrating thing. I am certainly motivated by scorned plays of Noah Brown, but he did have a good week this week, and we have no idea what Nico Collins is going to look like entering Saturday or Sunday. I think it's a Sunday game, but I don't remember the Texans schedule.
So Nico Collins, I guess, in reading his inactive note, I guess he was out there working out on the field.
It was close. Yeah.
So he wasn't far off. So I expect Nico Collins to play, and so that takes him down a little bit, but also I expect CJ Stroud to be back, which takes him up quite a bit here in my eyes here. And
against the Titans this week, right?
Yeah, I believe it is the Titans this
Horrible
week.
pass defense.
Actually, no, it's against the Browns this week. It was against the Titans last week.
I was thinking Titans last week.
So that was, I actually had Noah Brown up higher on the list until I saw that he was playing the Browns. At least it's at home. I mean, and I believe the Browns have at least one injury in the secondary, I want to say.
Yeah, Denzel Ward came back, and I think Greg Newsom's been banged up at times. There might be a safety, but that also changes, it feels like, day to day. Like, we had a few of those key secondary players for a number of teams just become inactive or active Saturday or Sunday. It's been a tumultuous 7-day stretch, I think, with major injuries to a lot of key spots.
Yeah, absolutely. So anyway, even though it's a tough matchup, Nico Collins coming back. I've got a tough Nico Collins, Zay Flowers, Drake London carousel that I'm going to have to make a decision on out of one of those 3 in the playoffs here. But yeah, so Noah Brown coming back, obviously elite usage. Guys like Xavier Hutchinson and Robert Woods are distant wide receiver 2s and 3s this past week. Dalton Schultz was essentially wide receiver 2 with the amount of snaps in the routes run that he had. So yes, Brown will see a little more competition for targets, but also the targets are going to be far more valuable than they were this past week, with CJ Stroud at the helm there. So I think, and Noah Brown isn't the focal point number 1 of the defense either. So I think another 8 for 82 stat line is very much within reach, even against this Cleveland team that I hope stays hot. I hope Flacco and my boy Njoku, guys stay hot. My Njoku shares have finally started to catch fire, and it's carrying me in these playoffs. I'll tell you that.
So we had mentioned a bunch of these receivers. Let's just say hypothetically in shallower leagues, Jerick McKinnon, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Ty Chandler, and not just those 3, not Samir White per se, but those 3 from last week, they're all available. Would they rank higher than even the Darren Wallers and Tyler Boyds this week for you?
So Ty Chandler is 53%, so I kind of left him out by design. And then
again, Alexander Mattison likely not playing with the high.
Likely not playing. We think
that sounds like a real high ankle sprain.
Okay, yeah. In that case, then Tyler Boyd would probably jump into my top 5 over my current number 5 pick, Chase Brown. And the Chiefs guys, I thought about that. I wrote a little bit about them in our outline for when we get to the running backs next up here. But I actually left the Chiefs guy. Actually, my first view of the thing, I had Clyde Edwards-Helaire number 1, and then it looks like Isaiah Pacheco is going to play. They seem pretty confident in that. Yep. And that pretty much nukes the value of Edwards-Helaire and McKinnon. I think both Edwards-Helaire and McKinnon are startable and quality flex plays as long as Pacheco out. But when Pacheco's back, the whole thing just becomes a mess once again here. So I put neither of them on my list. It's all or nothing. Pacheco could always suffer a setback, but I think I think Andy Reid pretty much said Pacheco's going to go barring a setback, which of
Yeah.
course the qualifier you can use with every situation. But so anyway, I took the Chiefs backs off my list. I kept Ty Chandler off my list because of the 53% threshold, and I left Chase Brown on here. 20%. There's some good numbers with Chase Brown. Let me see if I got it here. Again, only 20% rostered. Again, per Jerry's fabulous box score breakdown, he only saw 17% of snaps. So on the surface, that is concerning. But when he's in the game, he gets the ball. He actually saw 40% of the running back opportunities. Got the ball on 10 of 12 times that he was in the game. 10 of the 12 snaps he was in the game. When he comes in, they throw a screen pass, and whether teams get wise to it or not, it's effective. So there's small standalone value for Chase Brown, but he's also quite possibly the number one handcuff in all of fantasy, kind of heading into this weekend.
Well, yeah, and that's why I asked the Ty Chandler question, because to me, if he is available in your leagues, again, I would assume shallower formats, he is a pickup and play against the line. Somebody in the chat was asking, does Nick Mullins become a top 5 quarterback, not streamer, but top 5 quarterback this week because he's going against the Lions? They're likely throwing the ball a lot. My answer was no. If Nick Mullins is throwing 70 times, the Vikings have lost by 40 points. And I don't think they want to. You don't want to expose your third string backup quarterback in that extent. But Ty Chandler looked really good. And I think that's one of the reasons why the Vikings could be competitive in this game. He is a good runner and a good pass catcher and is going to get the majority of the workload.
And I'll take the L on that. Even though I had him as my number one pickup, I said that there's just a good chance he goes out there and gets 5 fantasy points. He proved me wrong. I took the L. I've never seen him come out and play like he did on Saturday before, and he looked like a hell of a football player.
Both of us can walk that back. I thought Ty Chandler wasn't very good, and my mind is completely changed. Again, I say I'm a disciple of Mario Puig and John McKechnie, who know all these college guys more intimately than we do. They were pretty out on them, and I think rightfully so. They were out on Ty Chandler. I think I'm in on Ty Chandler. The way he was playing, the way he was running, that was a hard ball carrier, but also a guy that was shifty. He's an immediate play in my lineup if you have him and are looking at a flex spot. So Ty Chandler would be at top of my list if he was available. Again, Darren Waller, Josh Palmer.
It's a tough one with Ty. If you need a flex, then you go out and get him. But if you're confident in your flex already, I could see making a case for checking on someone like Chase Brown's availability just because of the ultimate ceiling if the right circumstances fall into play.
Right. Yeah, I'm with you. The other guy, at least on my list, I want to bring him up because he was a little bit buried in the news, was Justice Hill. Keaton Mitchell, of course, now done for the season. Another tough injury for the Ravens backfield. Gus Edwards is the guy that's getting a lot of the ball carrier opportunities, but they need somebody to be a bit of a pass catcher, an explosive runner. I don't know if I would qualify Justice Hill as an explosive runner, but there were even times earlier this season we saw him get more involved than Keaton Mitchell. It was like the C- version of the Devon Achane thing with the Dolphins, the playing time usage they had for Mitchell. I think Justice Hill just kind of gobbles up all those opportunities, and whereas it was 30, 15, 35 split between Edwards, Hill, and Mitchell, it might be more like a 45-55 split in favor of Justice Hill. That's why
last week it was 39% Edwards, 36% Mitchell, 26% Hill, and he had 5 carries. Now, granted, it would have been more Edwards Mitchell heavy if Mitchell didn't go down. But yes, you're right. I agree with you that there's some standalone value in Justice Hill. He just missed my list, but again, it's a very close list this week, and Hill was definitely a guy I wanted to talk about.
Okay, cool. Again, just for everyone that's jumping in here, our top 5 list, you have Tyler Boyd, number 1. I had Darren Waller. Likely are both possibly not available. Ty Chandler also makes that list if he is available. Guys that are probably more in the range, Dontavian Wicks, with the stats of Jaden Reed up in the air, Noah Brown. We'll see what Nico Collins does for the Texans, and Josh Palmer in relation to Keenan Allen. I also listed Justice Hill among my top 5 list too. They're all, like you said at the beginning, more or less in that same spot, but certainly ones you could consider and possibly play this week. All right, before we dive into the running back section first, let's get a word from our sponsors, Blue Wire. Okay, so we're talking running backs, and last week was a pretty heavy one with Ty Chandler and Zamir White. You had the Chiefs running backs as well, too. Not so much this week. You had Chase Brown among your top 5 list. Totally makes sense if you are looking for a possible plug-and-play starter. If you really, really need to, same goes for Ty Chandler. I think Jerick McKinnon and Edwards-Helaire also on that list. Just depending on the status of Pacheco, it sounds like he might play, so both those guys fall off. I had mentioned Justice Hill. I want to dive into Trey Sermon because I had played Zach Moss in the Vegas League this week, and he got 12 points in the first quarter and a half. I'm like, oh, this is great.
Yep,
awesome.
I was ready to roll.
And
Denver is dead last against running backs, fantasy running backs, and just about any way you cut it. They're also dead last against tight ends. It's a weird combo here with the Broncos this week. But I started Zach Moss in my super flex spot in a super flex league over Will Levis, over Derek Carr, over a slew of duds that are out there on the wire. And I was starting to get very happy with that decision. Then of course,
yeah, again, a quarter and a half, 12.5 points, and then I don't know if it was his forearm that he injured. Of course, he missed time to begin the season with that forearm injury. Whatever the case, then it was Trey Sermon, and then our boy Tyler Goodson, because he was a former Packer. Both those guys looked excellent.
I knew that name sounded familiar.
Yes, oh yes, you definitely knew it while
Tyler
you were watching
Goodson?
that game. Yeah, it's Tyler Goodson of the Packers. I don't know what to make of it. I mean, Trey Sermon looked at the part. I thought Tyler Goodson looked pretty good too, but they aren't going against the Broncos defense, which you mentioned is dead last against running backs. And there's the possibility Jonathan Taylor might be able to make his return. And with the Colts pushing for a playoff spot, you can bet they're going to rush back Jonathan Taylor and or Zach Moss. So I don't know if I'm considering any of those guys unless we get more word on the status of JT and Zach Moss.
Yeah, no, exactly right on that. They didn't. If I knew that JT and Zach Moss are out, Trey Sermon probably would have made my top 5, even though he's, even though he is, he's Trey Sermon, right? He was, pretty much a consensus bust after the 49ers. I know a lot of you out there in the same club that drafted him pretty early his rookie year, thinking he was going to take off, and ended up being a Raheem Mostert year there, of course. But I put a section on here. But the thing is remember they played Saturday, so Moss has an extra day to recover from the injury. It's the same situation kind of with Michael Pittman. I put one of his replacements in a long shot, but he actually could get out of concussion protocol, Pittman, even though vicious hit, brutal hit. He could actually get out of concussion protocol just because there's one extra day, and that makes all the difference here. So we'll see how that goes. Pittman's another one in Dynasty League. I need in order to find a matchup with the lean, mean Chris Benzine in the title game there. So shout out to Zine there. But anyway, not to get too far off track. Sermon is the guy. It was, let's see, what do I have here? 63% of second half snaps for Sermon. Finished with 17 carries for 88 yards. So that's a decent stat line. Again, remember, it's the Broncos. They're somehow worse than Joe Barry's defense in defending the run.
Give Joe Barry time. Don't worry. He's got 35 carries from Chuba Hubbard coming up this week. That might change. We'll see.
My God, yeah.
I know. It's going to happen. Be prepared. Chuba Hubbard,
I was
200 yards
I
rushing.
walked out of Lambeau on Sunday thinking to myself, if there's any bright spot, they fired Joe Barry now, right? And still has not happened. So anyway, that's a new thing. But yes, Trey Sermon is there. I have little to no interest in Tyler Goodson. Super long shot option if a million things fall there. But Trey Sermon 0% rostered. So, if you have Moss and we're planning on starting him in a deeper league, you can probably go ahead and pick up Sermon just in case. But again, it sounds like Moss is going to play.
Then there's Zamir White, who, again, I was recommending as one of my top pickups last week. And there was a whole lot of concern about Amir Abdullah. Well, that didn't really end up happening. They had multiple guys get rushing touchdowns. The ball was spread around early and often in that blowout win. Different scenario this week with the Chiefs defense on tap, and we'll see what happens with the stats of Josh Jacobs. I don't think the Raiders are technically out of playoff contention, but they more or less are. I had made the point last week, see what you have in Zamir White. I will still make the same point, see what you have in Zamir White. But we need to know if Josh Jacobs is able to play, because that obviously is the difference.
Zamir White was 0% rostered, before Josh Jacobs got hurt because he dominated the carries there. And he's still only 16% rostered because he didn't really break onto the scene here, become relevant until the playoffs started. So you got to remember there's a lot of leagues that, just haven't done pickups anymore with 75% of the teams being out at this point here. And more at this point. But Zamir White is interesting. If you picked him up as a Jacobs insurance policy, obviously you still hold him. I picked him up as my A.J. Dillon insurance policy. Unfortunately, I fell out of the playoffs in that league. That was the Invitational, the one that I got the boot from. But Zamir White still makes the list, still makes a mention. Again, it's not going to be as easy as the Chargers, but there's still usage there.
We had mentioned Chris Rodriguez on a number of occasions with the Commanders' backfield, even when they had the bye 2 weeks ago, and said, hey, just monitor this, see what happens with Brian Robinson. I have no idea what the status will be for Robinson this week. That Jacoby Brissett is your quarterback possibly for the
I think
the
they
next
said
4
today
weeks?
that Howell's going to be the starter.
So they just need to punish him for
but
a
they
little
don't want
bit.
to.
Okay.
Yeah, they don't want to completely wreck the rookie's confidence because obviously I think he is their. Or not the rookie, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, he's a second-year starter. But if you're benching him
yeah.
for Jacoby Brissett in a game that doesn't matter anyway, is he going to be your starter long-term? But Ron Rivera's dumb. I mean, we've seen Ron Rivera do dumb things now for a number of years, and this season has been right on par. So they benched him for Brissett doesn't.
If you have McLaurin shares, you are hoping, praying, screaming that somehow they change their mind and start Jacoby Brissett, because of course Brissett threw the touchdown to McLaurin, and there's another one where McLaurin was stopped at the 1, right? So it could have been an even bigger day. Fortunately, in that particular league, I was starting both McLaurin and Samuel got the rushing touchdown.
Right.
After that. So, but
the
anyway,
good old Commander's offensive stack, certainly profitable one, as you'd imagine.
Man, I am in the semifinals of our 14-team dynasty league, so something went okay there. But yeah, Chris Rodriguez, not exciting. 10 carries for 35 yards. Again, it all depends a little bit on the status of Brian Robinson, maybe game flow a little bit here. So you don't love him, but there's a decent chance I play him in Stake League if Robinson is still out, because it's him or Tyler Algier at this point for me, or I hope Ramondres comes back. So again, I don't know. That's a little bit too into it with my personal stuff, but we threw Rodriguez in there even after a brief mention last week. I know you skipped over it, but
I don't want to talk about the Bears.
You don't talk about the Bears?
No, yeah. I don't. Nobody right now listening in Dynasty, in loser leave town leagues, nobody is trying to figure out this Bears backfield.
Fair enough.
You can just roll the dice and say, you know what, I'm good. I don't need to figure out anything else, because the Bears have no idea on a day-to-day basis who is their running back. I don't care.
That's a good point. How can we know to tell you when the Bears don't even know? And,
no clue.
Yep. And granted, they faced the powerhouse defense in Cleveland, right? So Foreman got shut down real quick. Ended up being a Roschon Johnson game, but nothing too exciting there. So I'm not saying go out and pick up Roschon Johnson at 21% rostered, even though he got 51% of the snaps and 11 of 24 running back opportunities, because that probably is all going to change this week. So, just to recap here, we hit Rodriguez, Johnson a little bit, Zamir, Trey Sermon, Justice Hill, who you had in the top. I did want to quick backtrack to the Chiefs, just saying that if for whatever reason Isaiah Pacheco does suffer a setback in play, there's a lot of days between now and then. I actually think my preference is Clyde Edwards-Helaire. For the longest time, it was McKinnon because of his history of late season playoff winning efforts here and the fact that he's caught a receiving touchdown in back-to-back weeks. But Edwards-Helaire was the one I would have ranked higher on the list had I not seen the Pacheco news, because he had 61% of snaps and 17 of 24 RB opportunities. McKinnon, of course, they like to use him as a pass catcher in the red zone, but 13 carries for Edwards-Helaire compared to 4 for McKinnon. Of course, both of them caught receiving touchdowns, on Sunday against the Patriots. So I just wanted to make that note about those guys in case something happens with Pacheco, because those guys shoot right up my list.
Hey, if you're a 49ers fan, listen up to this. Get ready for the big game parties at Circa Resort and Casino. I say that because the Niners are clearly the best team and will never lose again, the way things are happening right now in the NFC. And Niners fans can celebrate Super Sunday in Las Vegas this year because, of course, they are actually going to get there. Watch the big game poolside at Stadium Swim's big game viewing party. You get the massive screen, the booming game sound, and, of course, the view of the pyrotechnic and visual effects throughout the game. Snag the best seat in the sun with day beds, poolside boxes, cabanas, and more, or touch down at the world's largest sports book, Circa Sports, for the Big Game Bash. 3 stories of football glory featuring a 78 million pixel screen. Book your seat with a variety of reservation options, including bottle service, open bar, stadium-style food, and more. Don't miss these legendary viewing experiences. February 11th, the big game viewing parties, only for Niner fans, because that's the only good team in the NFL, at Circa Resort and Casino. Reserve today at circalasvegas.com. I'm not bitter, Jake, I promise. And I'm also not bitter about Odds Are. Are you ready to revolutionize your sports betting approach? Begin with a 2-week free trial at oddsr.com, where cutting-edge AI technology sharpens your edge in the betting game. Benefit from our proven 2-year track record, boasting a 60% accuracy rate and an impressive 10% ROI. The Odds Are AI meticulously shifts through extensive data to reveal high green value plays, guiding you towards smarter betting decisions. And it's not just about the numbers. The Odds Are app is exceptionally user-friendly, crafted to be your go-to betting advisor right at your fingertips. Jumpstart your journey to be a betting smarter and more successful better by visiting iOS or the Google Play Store. You can download the Odds Are, so it's ODDSR app, and step into a world of confident betting. Your path to a more strategic betting experience starts with the 2-week free trial. Download today, where smart strategy triumphs over luck. I wish that were the case in fantasy, but I'm glad Odds Are is looking out for the bettors out there. Looking out for you guys, the listeners of the fantasy experience here, we are trying to find the top waiver wire pickups at wide receiver. And we had mentioned last week Zay Jones, Odell Beckham, not really great. Curtis Samuel continues to be a touchdown hog here for the Commanders offense. And I think, again, we had mentioned Dontavian Wicks is the top guy. If Jaden Reed misses time with that toe injury, we'll see what his status is. Or Tyler Boyd and Noah Brown, who are both benefiting with the likes of Jamar Chase and T. Higgins possibly not playing.
And also Zay Jones, who was a top 5 option last week for us, I think came up with a hamstring injury. There's an injury late in that game here, so maybe we'll push some of those other guys up. But I know we had a question a while back about Zay Jones, so he's probably out of that mix, not being 100%. But yeah, you set the table here perfectly. Our top 4 of my top 5 and 3 of your top 5 pickups were wide receivers this week. It is a wide receiver flex week with guys out there. And, of course, Dontavian Wicks, if you missed this at the beginning of the show, only 4% rostered. He had a big game, 6 of 7 targets, 97 yards. And just the Packers receiving core banged up in general. Christian Watson still has the hamstring. Jaden Reed suffered a toe injury late and has been banged up off and on this season.
And the Panthers are scoring 30 points come Sunday, so that you're going to have to pass the ball and move it. Yep. Keep up against the worst number 1 quarterback in a decade and a half.
I've been riding Chuba Hubbard as a flex in a 16-teamer, and it's actually been successful.
Career high.
Ever since they cammed the coach, Hubbard has been the definitive back over Miles Sanders, and it's been working.
Miles Sanders will look good too against Joe Barry.
They'll find a way to make them both look good, I'm sure.
Yeah, that's the easy and obvious DFS play. Again, not a bitter Packers fan whatsoever. So besides those obvious options, you got Jameson Williams, you have Rashid Shaheed, who might benefit with Chris Olave still banged up, Treylon Burks. Honestly, Jake, all 3 of these options, it's I don't really want to look at any of them.
Once again, if you can't get Wicks at 4%, you mentioned the obvious options. I'm just going to reiterate them in case you're tuning in late. Tyler Boyd at 49% was my number 1 pickup with Jamar Chase out. Noah Brown's at 40%, but watch it, tough matchup. Nico Collins coming back. Josh Palmer, 30%. His production was maybe a little bit fluky this last week, but he was off IR, and you just got to watch for Keenan Allen's status there. So those were all top 5 pickups on my list here. And then after that, I threw on Jameson Williams, who was only 22% rostered. Both in terms of snaps and route rate, he was wide receiver 2 to Amon-Ra St. Brown. I guess technically wide receiver 3 because Sam Laporta is arguably wide receiver 1 on this Lions team here. So anyway, impressive. Second in snaps at 69%, route rate 72%. He had 7 targets. He had 113 air yards, right? So the way I see it, if this Lions offense is operating, if Jameson Williams is up to speed, they're operating at their top tier. Amon-Ra is the possession receiver, should lead him in targets. Williams is a downfield guy that you can also even use on gadget plays a little bit. And I've been a believer in Jameson Williams all year long. I also have to note on here that Josh Reynolds kind of played through a back injury. But I feel like Jameson Williams is due for a big game. And you could do worse than a long shot flex. He's one of those guys where... if your projection is really, really close with your opponent, you stay conservative with someone you're confident is going to get you 8 points. But if you're a ways back and you need a moonshot, your opponent's better than you, I'd be more interested in throwing Jameson Williams in there and see if my theory on him about getting close to having a big game comes to fruition.
I just don't know if that scenario happens with Final Four teams left. It would be really tough for me to say, all right, my best case scenario is hoping Jameson Williams gets me 25 points. I don't actually subscribe to that. And I'm normally the person that says this is a great time, roll the dice. Yeah. If you've gotten to this point, you likely have players that can do this and have done it more consistently. Like Noah Brown is a perfect example. 8 catches, 80 yards, and 2 touchdowns. He's not doing that if Nico Collins is healthy. But if it's CJ Stroud as your quarterback, I know it's the Browns defense, but I feel better about Noah Brown getting me 10 points or scoring a touchdown, whatever else. I don't know. I don't know if the Lions are dropping 42 points again.
You're just looking at 40% rostered to 22% rostered. So, again, there's a situation for everyone, and that's why I try to get as deep as possible with these picks. A regular spot on this show all year long has been Rashid Shaheed. Yes. He's only 47% rostered, but I did not put him in my top 5 because I like these other receivers a little bit better. Of course, his production was with Chris Olave, kind of a surprise inactive with an ankle injury. Rashid Shaheed was out there for 57% of snaps, which I believe was the highest among wide receivers, and he ran a team-high 53% or a team-high 23 routes. Again, taking all these stats from Jerry's incredible box score breakdown here really helps you get a picture of the usage here. No other Saints receiver had a route run rate of over 50%. So even if Olave returns, Shaheed is wide receiver 2. If he doesn't, for whatever reason, Shaheed probably ramps up his time on the field and his usage even more this week. They're getting healthy little by little. Taysom Hill was back, but he didn't have a super prominent role. They're spreading the ball around the running backs a little bit more. But Shaheed is, in Dynasty, if I end up getting frozen out of Pittman and Keenan Allen, I'm starting Shaheed.
Yeah, well, I think you should. Also, going against the Rams this week, whether Olave plays or not, I think there's got to be 2 receivers for the Saints that are going to be effective if they are to pull off the upset win and kind of continue on with the NFC South divisional win. We'll see how that works out, but I think Shaheed is a totally fine call if you're going that direction. You also have Treylon Burks down there. I understand that with DeAndre Hopkins. I actually kind of wanted to combo it with the receivers that were injured. So in the case of Michael Pittman, we saw DJ Montgomery blow that 1 touchdown catch, but make up for it later on the win. Then there's Cedric Wilson now, 2 consecutive weeks that Hill's missed time. He's been the biggest beneficiary. And we have no idea what's going to happen with these Jags receivers now that Zay Jones also injured as well too. So Parker Washington, DJ Montgomery, Cedric Wilson, of those 3, is there one in deeper leagues that you would feel more confident starting over the other?
I wrote DJ Montgomery just as a mention, but I think Pittman's going to clear protocol. We'll see. If Demarcus Robinson is also directly related to Tutu Atwell, who missed the game with a concussion. If Atwell's back, he kind of shares the wide receiver role with Demarcus Robinson, so that bumps him down the list. So a lot of these are, Cedric Wilson gets no love for me if Tyreek Hill's back, and it seems like he's getting close. So, those were guys on there that I put on the list that are situational. Names I just wanted to get out there for the listeners, just in case they're.
And Dontavian Wicks is like a perfect example as well, too. If you are looking for a fill-in, Wicks widely available, whereas those other guys, you have to hope for things to occur. It sounds like Christian Watson, Jaden Reed, their stats a bit more murky than anybody else.
And I will throw just a quick backtrack to Burks. I think he's got at least 2 more years of being on my best ball late-round target list because I have always believed in his ability, and I've seen flashes with his hands and his route routing. He's just been ravaged by injuries his entire first 2 NFL seasons. It just hasn't worked out for him, and of course has had to deal with a lot of really poor quarterback play. So if even one of those things turns around, I do like. I still am okay on his long-term outlook, but it'd be a tall ask to start him this week.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. Real quick here, before we dive into the tight ends, we talked about Darren Waller if he was available, but also Tucker Kraft, and where he ranks among this group. Let's get a word from our sponsors, Splash Sports. RotoWire is a proud partner with Splash Sports for the 2023 fantasy football season. I know it's closing soon, but Splash Sports empowers gaming commissioners to earn by creating contests. Commissioners can set up contests, add their style, and enjoy the evolving Splash Sports platform for customized preferences from daily to season-long contests. Splash Sports caters to various playing styles, such as DFS, Pick X, and traditional Survivor. And unlike traditional sportsbooks, Splash Sports pits you against friends and family, not the house. Splash goes beyond betting, a space where friends can connect, strategize, and share in the excitement of sports. RotoWire will be running a weekly DFS tier contest on Splash Sports all season long. Can you beat the RotoWire experts? We'll visit rotowire.com/splash and enter today. I had said the tight ends. We'll get to them in a second as well, too. The streaming quarterback section is a little bit murky, whereas I thought Joe Flacco and Jake Browning were both great options. And actually, Jake, both of them did outscore Tua and Kyler, who are my biggest recommendations. It looks a little bit less obvious for those candidates. So I'll run down the list.
You got on me last week for saying I wanted to start Browning over Dak. I wish I did. Thankfully, I still made it through. But I don't think we're going to see too many Dak duds anymore. There are only a couple options. We don't need to run down the whole list. I wrote them all out. But it's pretty much the same as the last couple weeks. I would still look at Browning, even though he's got a tougher matchup at Pittsburgh. Derek Carr has a pretty good matchup at the Rams, but here's one. In a 12-team Superflex league, I mentioned starting Zach Moss over Derek Carr last week. I actually cut Derek Carr because I want to goat somebody I'm playing into picking him up and superflexing him, so I can finally benefit from Derek Carr by going against him in an important playoff matchup here. So I throw that one out. I still like Browning. I'm okay with Gardner Minshew at Atlanta. I'm okay with Joe Flacco at Houston. Those are all fine options for me.
That's good. Yeah, and I agree with the streaming options overall. It's just a little bit less. And there, thankfully, can't be any more injuries. For me, it's Bryce Young. And I'm not saying that as a bitter fan, I promise. But Bryce Young will have a career game. You can take it to the bank. Joe Barry wants you to walk there. So does Matt LaFleur. Wants you to have as much money as possible. Bryce Young will throw for over 150 yards because it's Joe Barry's defense, the Packers defense.
And for the record, Barry's lost that locker room. Jair Alexander should be back by now, but he is just not playing, and it doesn't seem like he wants to go out and play for Barry if he is not 100% perfect health here. So that's one symptom. There was LaFleur.
Somebody's asking, would they play Baker Mayfield? I mean, I understand that. I will play Jake Letarski throwing the ball to any other NFL receivers against Joe Barry's defense. I will play myself throwing the ball, all 5'8" of me throwing the ball. That's how bad Joe Barry is at calling professional football game defense. That's all it is.
He's lost the locker room. It's only getting worse. You know, Devondre Campbell had some comments that seemed awfully familiar of echoing what Jair Alexander was saying.
He's not going to play. He's hurt, because
I think there's a whole, you know, we can go into the Packer drama too much, but you know, LaFleur talked about the gap in communication. Who's the linebacker that has to make the defensive calls once they're relayed from Barry? It's Campbell. You know, so maybe he took that as a little bit of a shot. It's a mess, man. I really. I could actually see streaming Bryce Young this week because, hey, you know, they've got some guys. Adam Thielen has, instead of Flacco, I'd actually take Flacco first. Flacco. You know, at Houston, he's indoors. He's been hot. The receiving weapons are healthy.
Possibly no Will Anderson, stud pass rusher for the Texans too.
Exactly. So I actually would rank Flacco over Bryce Young, but I could see Young having a game because, but then again, you know, the Packers always surprise me. Right when we're ready to throw in the towel, something happens here, and they do have. If they win out, I think they still have a 95% chance to make the playoffs. If they win out,
yeah.
The Seahawks win last night didn't help, but
the other one was Nick Mullins, who the chat brought up as well too earlier, and they had said possibly erroneously that Nick Mullins could be a top 5 player. I understand the idea. The Lions' defense is bad. It's not Joe Barry bad. This was the first time that a non-quarterback in the 75-year history of Lambeau Field and Packers put together a perfect passer rating. And it was Baker Mayfield, who was on his third team in the past 3 years. It's not like it's Baker Mayfield. It's fantastic. It's the Joe Barry defense. So I do think Bryce Young is a better play than Nick Mullins. Like, I have more confidence that Joe Barry is incapable at his job than I have at the Lions being able to figure out Nick Mullins.
And I will say, because of the Baker Mayfield questions, I didn't include him on the streaming list because he's over 50%.
Yeah,
he's interesting. He's fine, especially if they've got something going with Chris Godwin. But once again, you're not going to see that soft coverage the rest of the season here. And Nick Mullins, I don't love it. I mean, I watched pretty much that entire game on Saturday, and there was just as much bad as there was good. Yes, his receivers were able to make some plays for him. He's got great pass-catching weapons, but some of those picks he threw were dreadful here. I am not necessarily...
The catches that Addison made in particular were like one of those, no, oh, yes, good throw type of deals. Like, there was a lot more of that than you see on the box score.
There could have been a half a step wrong the other way, and these plays, and then that stat line could have looked a lot worse. So I know there was some Nick Mullins enthusiasm in the chat earlier in the show. I don't share that, and just for perspective, I could go get him in my 2-quarterback league, but I feel more comfortable starting Drake London, Nico Collins, or Zay Flowers in that super flex spot.
Right, I'm with you. Do we need to have the 2 QB conversation? I feel like Nick Mullins is widely available. You could probably pick up Bryce Young anywhere. These guys would be pretty easy streaming candidates, not even so much like the likes of the Zach Wilsons or Trevor Simeons of the world, right?
I can hit it in 30 seconds here.
Okay, fine.
All right, Trevor Lawrence in concussion protocol. CJ Beathard, the backup. Mason Rudolph will start Week 16 over Mitch Trubisky. He replaced him in the fourth quarter Saturday. Trubisky is trash. We all know that. Again, Nick Mullins will start again Week 16 against the Lions. We just touched on him. Will Levis suffered a sprained ankle, which was apparently described as similar to Ryan Tannehill's last year. Tannehill still on the roster, remember? So he could get that look because I don't think they will go with Malik Willis here. Tannehill gives him a better chance to win. And there's still some stakes, I believe, for Tennessee. So interesting there. Maybe that even helps Hopkins.
I think the Titans are out of playoff contention, but it doesn't if you're Ryan Tannehill, you're playing for your job next year, where all these quarterbacks, and even as a quality backup one, you could sign a Taylor Heineke 2-year, $16 million deal if you do well the final 3 weeks of the season.
Absolutely. Everyone's favorite team, the Jets. Zach Wilson had a second quarter concussion or whatever the heck they're calling that. I don't know. Again, some weird
dehydration I saw as well too.
Yeah, I've seen this called a lot of things. Like, who knows what's going on with the Jets? He gave way to Trevor Siemian. Neither of them scored any points. I would pick up. Remember, I said I didn't have any interest in Tyler Goodson earlier in the show.
Right.
I'd start him in a super flex before either of these Jets QBs. So That's
and
everything
we also
need
have
there.
the clock on Aaron Rodgers. We are going to find out in the next 24 hours whether he will or will not play. The Jets have until Wednesday to activate him off the injured reserve practice list. If he is not, he is done for the season, no matter what Rodgers has to say.
All intents and purposes, that's a stupid idea. Why would you activate him and risk, the guy that you're owe all this money? He's your entire season next year.
Oh yeah,
I don't get it. But again, the only thing that makes me think they might is it's the Jets, right?
And I want to be clear because we won't be able to have this conversation. If Rodgers is activated, he will start. There's no reason not to. So he will start. So the question becomes: does he become a pickup? No, I'm only picking up Rodgers if I think my opponent will play him, or if I think I will play him. I will not play Aaron Rodgers at all this season. I don't care if he lights it up for 303 touchdowns. Great. Somebody else can roll that dice because I think just as easily his Achilles can blow out again behind that offensive line. So there's no point or world where I am picking up Aaron Rodgers if he gets activated tomorrow. And I just want to be clear with that statement right now.
The words offensive line actually just sparked something in my head that I want to go back to real quick before we move on from quarterbacks. Joe Flacco, I mentioned liking him. I might actually change course on that because I forgot that I think 2 more of his offensive linemen got hurt. I think they're down to 1 healthy offensive lineman in Cleveland that started the season.
That's right, yeah.
So they're super banged up. So you don't touch Brown's running backs in just about any circumstance here. But who knows? Quick passes, he could I don't know. Maybe he does something with that, but I would be a little bit worried about that offensive line scenario. That's enough about quarterbacks. We can move on.
No. I want to make a small note. One of the bit of feedback I have gotten about the podcast is that I too often say a player should not be in the NFL. Even if I truly believe Tommy DeVito should not be in the NFL, I need to be clear that I should not make that statement as much. I am making that statement about you and I playing quarterback against Joe Barry. I'm dead serious that no matter how bad of a number 1 overall pick Bryce Young has been, he will be good this week because Joe Barry has no idea what to do and has lost the locker room like you mentioned. I'm looking you right in the eye right now. I'm saying I would play Bryce Young in a lot of circumstances because that's how confident I am Joe Barry has no idea what to do. That Matt LaFleur continues to have him as the defense coordinator tells me Matt LaFleur also has no idea what to do. I was saying that when they kept Slayton around, their special teams coordinator, who cost them against the Niners. Well, this is a bigger deal, same concept. I understand that I'm too frivolously using the idea that this person shouldn't be in the NFL.
See,
Joe Barry should not.
Here's the problem. When you go on a rant like this, we get questions in the chat about people who want to play Jonathan Mingo over McLaurin and Chris Olave. No, don't do that. See, when you go completely off the rails like that, it's these kind of ideas that people get in their heads. So yes.
Yeah, right. I drew that one
everything has context here. Everything has context. And yes, Bryce Young is probably going to have the best game of the season here. I just hope Jordan Love and the team can score enough points to keep up.
The best game of his season will be 200 yards and a touchdown. That's how bad Bryce Young has been. And I feel very confident he'll do that, and I feel very confident Chuba Hubbard will be fine. Yep. No, I would not play Jonathan Mingo over Chris Olave.
Also remember, Adam Thielen has just been a Packer killer for like his whole career.
True. I hadn't even thought about
Adam
that.
Thielen could have the best game of his career too. So yeah, just throwing that out there. Anyway, yeah, I don't know. Maybe again, a little bitter Packer fandom in us there, but there's some truth behind
It's just
that.
A point of feedback, and I want to be clear with my statement that I don't care how often I have said this person shouldn't be in the NFL. Joe Barry should not be in the NFL at his capacity. Real quick with the tight ends, I had mentioned Darren Waller, who made the top of my waiver wire list. If he's available, again, rostered in 63% of leagues, he's available to be picked up in 2 of the 5 playoff leagues. So that's why I kind of threw it out there. I think Tucker Kraft is legitimate. We had talked about the locker room being lost for the Packers defense. That may be so, but Tucker Kraft has looked really good, and he runs really hard. I liked Luke Musgrave entering this year. I think I like both of these guys, and Tucker Kraft with Musgrave done for the season is easily a streaming tight end candidate if you are in need of one and still have gotten to this point in the season where you need one. So just to mention for both those as well.
Absolutely. Only 10% rostered, and he was actually close to making my top 5 too. There were just some guys that of course, were much higher rostered that I had a little bit more faith in the volume here, but caught 4 of his 6 targets for 57 yards and a touchdown. A lot of the stuff that we were saying about Wicks, about Watson being hurt, Reed being hurt, that applies to Kraft too, in a sense where there's more targets available. So I believe in the 3, what did I write down? In the 3 weeks since Musgrave's injury, or maybe 4, he's averaging 3.3 catches, 4.5 targets, 43.3 yards, and 0.5 touchdowns. And that is starting. I mean, there's a Pitts question in here. I would
play Kraft
consider Kraft over Pitts.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely. I like Dallas Goedert, I think, is the range where I'm still playing Goddard over Kraft.
Oh yeah.
Evan Ingram, Njoku, obviously.
Ingram definitely, especially with how Ingram last week wasn't so hot, but Ingram was on a tear since Christian Kirk
Yeah.
was out here, and if Zay Jones is out, again, we'll see what happens if CJ Beathard is the quarterback and if Lawrence doesn't clear concussion protocol. But Ingram has been he's been a beast, for the last few weeks here with more targets to go around.
It would be over like the Logan Thomases and Tyler Conklins of the world. I think Tucker Kraft is the clear call. But we're talking about tight end 12.
Tucker Kraft over Cade Otton, I think.
Yep. I think at this point for sure. Yeah, but like Hawkinson, obviously, you're playing all those staples. And that's my issue is that maybe there's 4 to 6 teams left that are listening to this and thinking, okay, well, what do I need? Unless you're in a deep super flex league, I would imagine Tucker Kraft probably doesn't have a lot of utility.
I mean, if you're in the semifinals right now, there's a good chance you have one of Laporta or Hawkinson
or McBride
or
as well.
Njoku or McBride. Yeah, right. Those are the guys. Because I think the Kelsey team playoff percentage hasn't been super successful this year. It has been a down year here. I know you hate talking about the Patriots, but I think there is a relevant conversation to be had here. Hunter Henry, 24% rostered. I mentioned him last week, but we went over it pretty quick. He actually went out and had 19 PPR points before getting hurt in the fourth quarter with a knee injury. So definitely you want to watch him. It appears that, and this is even with Demario Douglas and Devontae Parker both back in action for the Patriots. So, you have to keep that in mind. So even with all these bodies healthy, of course, Ramondre Stevenson, not being a factor in the passing game either, maybe it evens out. But even with all these bodies healthy, Hunter Henry was getting work. But if he doesn't play, there's always Mike Gesicki. If you're desperate, if you're in a fishbowl 2 tight end type situation, he's only 3% rostered. And yes, Gesicki's only had 4 targets in 4 games since the bye week, coming off back-to-back 0 target weeks before this past week. But they are playing the Broncos, and the Broncos are dead last against tight ends, if I picked that stat up correctly. So whoever is, we've always had to deal with 2 Pats tight ends. If you only have to deal with one, I could consider there's some situations where I'm going to consider that.
Yeah, I will never consider Patriots. We've mentioned that a number of times, but I get it if you want to go down that direction. I'm going to get the questions teed up. We also have a bit of drama that I was a part of in one of my leagues that I want Jake to weigh in here too. But can you run through the streaming defenses real quick? So,
despite the Patriots tight ends I was just talking about, I actually had Denver. They're only 48% rostered against Bailey Zappi and the Patriots. I had him at the top of my list because I kind of go by the percentages, and that's who Jerry likes as well in his column. I know some columns, Jerry's number 2, and I've seen the Packers defense show up in a lot of these columns. I made a note specifically to say a lot of people are saying Packers, but like no chance in hell. The Vince McMahon walkout. Absolutely no chance will I pick up the Packers and stream them against anybody, even if it is the Panthers, and they are on the road
turnovers.
too.
Like that's what you want from a fantasy team. They don't get turnovers. They might get sacks. Gary's probably due for a couple, but that's only 1 or 2 points in a certain format. I won't go there either. I won't.
Yep. You could look at Indy, 46%, at Atlanta. Again, road team, don't love it. Tampa, 37% against Jacksonville. If CJ Beathard plays, then maybe. The Lions, 31% at Minnesota. Again, road game, and Mullins and the Lions' defense just hasn't looked good. The one I bolded was actually the Commanders at 15%. Not because I like the Commanders' defense or what they're doing or the direction they're heading in or the fact that they've traded pretty much their best defenders so far. It's the fact that they are playing the Jets. And
we believe Trevor Siemian, not Aaron Rodgers.
Yes, or Simeon, Zach Wilson, what have you. It doesn't matter. Obviously, if something happens with Aaron Rodgers there, but if there's any unit in football more sorry than the Packers' Joe Barry defense, it might be the Jets' offense. And I don't care what losses Washington has faced. I would pick them up and stream them against the Jets over a lot of options this week.
My first check on streaming defenses is the Bills, who are going against the hapless Chargers. Obviously, the Raiders did great on Thursday and were fantasy darlings for a lot of people. I don't think the Bills defense does that again, but I do think it's possible that they will be near the top of the fantasy rankings. And I'm targeting anybody going against the Chargers moving forward. So
yeah, they must have the Bills or
I think they have the Jets defense, and they're thinking, do they pick up the Bills defense?
I mean, I kind of want to pick up the Bills. Is that what you're
saying?
I
would play the Bills over the Jets, and I understand that Howell is a turnover machine, but I think the Bills defense, the way they're rolling, I don't see a scenario whether Allen's healthy, Austin Eckler plays, doesn't matter, that you are concerned if you are playing the Bills defense. They might not get 25, but they're going to get 10. So I would play the Bills defense for sure.
Yep, right on. And with the Howell Brissett thing, it looks pretty much like it's going to be Howell. They've all but announced that.
Okay.
As much as we want Brissett to start, for us fantasy guys, it's probably going to be Howell.
This is a difficult question, Jake, and I'll be honest right now that I don't know the correct answer. Pick two of these four. Ty Chandler after a 24-point game and full point PPR last week, now going against the Lions. James Conner against the Bears defense, been better late, but still the Bears defense. Zeke, we just mentioned where the Broncos defense is at. And then Jonathan Taylor, if he plays. I mean, those are four guys I would say I'd love to start all four, but you have to pick two out of that group.
Yeah. So here's how I do this. I right now, I'll say the first two, Ty Chandler and James Conner. Actually, no, I lied. My two picks are James Conner and Ezekiel Elliott, but only Ezekiel Elliott if Ramondre sits. If Ramondre's back and he's going back to a timeshare, then I go Chandler and Conner. I actually like Conner. He's been he had a good game even against San Francisco last week. He looks healthy. I mean, this offense can move the ball at times, and he's been a pretty consistent guy here where Chandler feels a little flash in the pan to me, but I guess we'll see. He can make me eat my words a little bit. But it's Conner and Zeke, but if Ramondre plays, then it's Conner and Chandler. How confident are we in Jonathan Taylor actually playing? Have we seen anything?
I think he is going to play, but to your point, is Zach Moss going to play? We'll see what his status is. Is he going to be effective after he plays? That's my biggest concern. And the Falcons' defense is pretty good, whereas you have obvious layups, I think, in Ty Chandler, and you also have an obvious layup in Ezekiel Elliott. To your point, if Ramondre does play, I don't want that timeshare, but I don't think he will. For me, it's Ty Chandler and Zeke, so I would rank it Ty Chandler, Zeke, then James Conner, then Jonathan Taylor, which feels crazy to say.
All we have on Jonathan Taylor is, quote, "We'll see how the week goes." So I guess me thinking that he doesn't actually play influenced that a little bit.
Okay, a quarterback here. You got Stafford. That's against the Saints defense. Kyler Murray against the Bears. Nick Mullins against the Lions. Or Joe Flacco against the Texans.
I'm going Stafford.
I think I'm going Stafford as well, too. I mean, that's a possibly win in your game
combo.
And
the Cup Puka combo is healthy. They're at full strength. They're ready to go. Stafford, they're going to help Stafford look good.
Okay, so Tucker Kraft or Cade Otton, we said Tucker Kraft, and then Olave, Mingo, or Wicks. I'd assume pick one, so it'd be Olave. But if not, Wicks or Mingo.
Yeah, Olave is the one if he starts.
I'm going Mingo here. I like Dontavian Wicks a lot. I think that's how bad Joe Barry is going to be, that I would play confidently Joe Mingo. Absolutely.
Yeah. See, I'm not confident in that one because I need to see the Packers wide receiver injury report. This isn't something that I can answer now. Right now, I guess I'd say Wicks, but if Reed's healthy and suits up, or even if Watson gets a glimmer of hope there, then obviously Wicks goes down that list. But yeah, I like Wicks as after Olave, of course. If Olave plays, he's it.
Final question, at least from the chat here. Would you play Jordan Addison or Jake Ferguson out at the flex spot, essentially, is the case?
OP spot. I wonder what we mean there.
I'm assuming flex.
Yeah, I think some scoring context would help, but I think I'd go Addison there.
I like both. Addison's got the big play potential, but if he finished with 4 catches for 50 yards, you wouldn't be surprised. Whereas
that would
Ferguson,
that's a typical Ferguson line, though.
Oh, right, but I mean, yeah, I think Addison's the right call. Yeah, I agree with you. I think Addison is the right call. Okay, I have mentioned the drama, Jake. You need to be Judge Jake here for my league. I played
this Lysol thing on my gavel.
Oh yes,
Don't
do that.
Sorry about that.
But yes,
sorry about that noise to anyone listening. I did not think it was going to do that.
The mental gavel is what I'm asking for. Okay, so I play in the Auto New League, OTTONEU. Been a sponsor in the past for RotoWire.
Friends of the site.
I love the Auto New formats. There are things I would change, but I love the Auto New format. It's 3 divisions, 12 teams total. Division winners all get a playoff spot. The 4th spot is decided based off a record. So there are 2 teams right now sitting at 8-6. The winner will get that 4th spot. I was playing one of the 8-6 teams. I am out of contention. I can keep college players in this format, so I cut one of my kickers, looking forward to signing one of the college players from next year. Well, it turns out that Jalen Hurts' interception cost me a chance at winning that game and upsetting a person who would have then made it in. So I did not field a starting lineup. I had missed Keenan Allen not being active Thursday, and I did not play a kicker. So because of those 2 choices that I made, I had lost that matchup and lost the league. There was no incentive for me to tank. I don't get a better pick because I missed the playoffs. So I was called spineless. I have no integrity. I should not be the commissioner of the league anymore because I picked up a kicker. I'm sorry, I picked up a college player instead of a kicker to help my team next year. My first question, Jake, because I think the answer is yes, but I need the league to hear it. You have been in leagues where when you are not playing, you don't set your lineup, right? Well, when you are out of playoff contention, you have not set your lineup. That's a normal thing, right?
I will still set a lineup.
You're still checking things no matter what. Like we had Brigham a couple of years ago in Snake League had 1,100 points because he never set his lineup after week 4.
Yeah. Okay.
You're always setting your lineup no matter what.
I will, as long as it's the regular season, I will set a lineup. I might not make pickups if I'm out of it.
Yep. I definitely don't do that.
But I will always set a lineup just to try to, show some semblance of competitiveness.
I typically do. I just had forgot, and I wasn't in playoff contention in this league, so I didn't remember that I had Keenan Allen. So that's one thing. I messed up on that mistake. But competitively hurting my team, which would be keeping a kicker over having a college player, was the biggest issue. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Like I can't win this year. It is not my fault that you lost because I didn't play a full lineup against this person. I'm hurting my team actively if I chose to keep a kicker. Am I really wrong with that?
So there are two facets to this. There's one, you chose a possible keeper over starting the kicker.
Correct.
2, you didn't take Keenan Allen out of the lineup.
Correct. Yep.
I would be okay. So, but would you have had to make a roster move, an add drop to replace Keenan Allen, or was there someone on your bench that
I could have played Keaton Mitchell if I had just been aware of things. So that was an error, and I apologize for that. I understand that, but I'm not spineless or losing integrity, at least in my mind.
Okay,
because I kept a college player over a kicker.
So the college player over the kicker, I have no problem with that. But if I was in that league, I would be angry about the Keenan Allen staying in the lineup.
Text me then. Let me know. I'm sorry that I was not paying attention.
I know. I would have. I would have definitely looked at that matchup and texted the person. That's for sure. Now, would the 6 points or whatever that Keaton Mitchell got you made the difference in the lineup?
Yep, because Jalen Hurts' interception at the very end was the difference as to why they lost.
So I can very much see why they are angry. I think it's an honest mistake for the one thing, and you. Okay, if everything you're saying is true, you weren't intentionally sabotaging or intentionally throwing.
There's no incentive for me to do so. Like I'm looking forward to my roster next year.
You got to take Keenan Allen out of there.
I didn't check things out there. The team does not matter. I've lost. I played in 15 leagues this year, 15 leagues last year. I have pictures of experts, like guys that you see on major networks, not setting their lineup because they're out of it. It is not crazy to me, and I feel like you have been in leagues too where that happens all the time. I just missed that one. So I understand that. But there was so much vitriol today. You have no integrity. You should never be the commission again. How could you ever be in any fantasy league and keeping a college player over a kicker? And I'm like, what are you guys talking about?
Okay, the college player over the kicker is not that big of a deal. There's a competitive reason for that in a dynasty format. I would still, if I were in that person's shoes, I'd be upset about Keenan Allen. He has the right to be upset about that. Maybe not go as far as he did, but this is a nuanced situation here because there's one omission that I'm fine with. One is like, come on, man, you could maybe change that.
There was some dogpiling.
It doesn't sound to me like you were throwing it for because you like one team better than the other.
No.
It doesn't sound like that at all. So
it was ridiculous. Well, thank you, Judge Jake. I accept your ruling. I made a mistake not playing Keenan Allen, and I apologize again for not being aware of what was happening an hour and a half before kickoff between the Chargers and Raiders. That I take my L on. To all of you who had said otherwise with the college player, haha, Judge Jake rules in my favor. So that does it for us on the Tuesday edition of the RotoWire. Smirk. You did. You said it's fine that I kept the college player.
That's the line there a little bit. If I had to make an actual ruling, I'd say, okay, fine.
They're coming for your head, Jake, on Twitter. It's not mine now.
Also, don't mistake this conversation as an interest or desire to serve as judge in any of your fantasy football disputes or rulings. Just want to clear that out. It's like Ron Swanson at the museum. Don't mistake my giving this speech as a genuine interest in art and expect to discuss it with me elsewhere.
Yes,
we're not dispute solvers here. We'll answer fantasy questions here, but y'all are adults. You can figure the rest of this out on your own.
You'd think some of those guys in that league, I'm not sure adult quite qualifies. But anyway, that does it for us on the Tuesday edition of the RotoWire NFL podcast, brought to you by Circa Sports. We'll be back in next week, hopefully for everyone's finals, and best of luck to all of your lineup decisions.